adventures and move on. Travel and road trip. Lifestyle. Hello everyone. In this video was captured last adventure in Batroun, North Lebanon. From Sanctuary of Saint Nimatullah Hardini. We are going to visit Saint Joseph Monastery, tomb of Saint Rafqa. We are here now in Saint Joseph Monastery and tomb of Saint Rafqa. Rafqa was born in Himalaya, one of the village of northern Med Lebanon, on June 29, 1832. She was the only child of Murad Siber El Chobokal Reyes and Rafqa Gamal. On July 7, 1830, she was baptized and named Boutrousi. Her parents taught her to love God and to practice daily prayer. At the age 7, she suffered her first great loss with the death of her mother. In 1843, her father experienced financial difficulties and sent her into service for 4 years in the home of Asad Badawi. Rafqa grew into a beautiful, pleasant, humorous young woman, pure and tender with serene voice. In 1841, she returned home to find that father had remarried. His new wife wanted Rafqa to marry her brother. Conflict developed when her aunt sought to arrange a marriage between her son and Rafqa. Rafqa in the congregation of the Mariomettes 1869 to 1971. At this time, Rafqa felt drawn to the religious life. She asked God to help her achieve her desire and set off for the convent of Our Lady of the Deliverance in Bekfile, accompanied by 2 girls whom she met along the road. When she entered the convent church, she felt deep joy and happiness. one look of the icon of Our Lady of Deliverance, she heard the voice of God's confirming her desire to enter the religious life. Following a year of postulancy, Rafqa received the habit of her congregation on the feast of Saint Joseph, March 9, 1861. A year later, she pronounced her first vows. A new nun, along with Sister Mary Gamaliel, was assigned to work in Jesuit-run seminary in Gazir. Among the seminarians were Elias Hawiak and Boutros El-Zogby, later become patriarch and archbishop, respectively. Rafqa was in charge of kitchen service. In her free time, she studied Arabic, calligraphy, and mathematics, and also helped to educate girls aspiring to join her congregation. In 1860, Rafqa was sent to Deir el-Qamar to teach catechism. There she witnessed the bloody clashes that occurred in Lebanon during period. On one occasion, she risked her own life by hiding a child under her robe and saving him from the death. After a year in Deir el-Qamar, Rafqa returned to Gazir. In 1862, she was sent to teach in a school her order in Byblos. 1 year later, she was transferred to Mad village. There, with another nun, she spent 7 years establishment a new school for girls, made possible through the generosity of Antun Issa. Rafqa in the Lebanese Maronite Order 1871 to 1914. In the Monastery of Saint Simon El Carnon Ado 1871-1897. While living in Maud, in following a crisis in her congregation, Rafqa sought divine guidance. Entering at St. George's Church, she prayed for help. Once again, she heard the Lord's voice confirming her call to religious life. Soon after, she dreamt that St. George, St. Simon, and St. Anthony the Great, the father of monasticism, were telling her to enter the Lebanese Maronite order. From Maud to the Maronite Monastery at St. Simon El Carnon Ado was facilitated by the generosity or Mr. Antun Issa. She was immediately admitted to the order, receiving the habit on July 12, 1871 and pronouncing her vows on August 22, 1872. She received the name Sister Rafqa after her mother. Shenhua to spend the next 26 years in the monastery of St. Simon. In her observation of the rule, her devotion to prayer and silence, in her life of sacrifice and austerity, she was a role model to the other nuns. On the first Sunday of October 1885, she entered the monastery and began to pray, and asking Jesus to permit her to experience some of suffering she endured during her passion. Her prayer was immediately answered. Unbearable pains began in her head and moved to her eyes. Her superior insists that she undergo medical treatment. After all local attempts to cure her had failed, she was sent to Beirut for treatment. Passing by St. John Mark's Church in Byblos, her companions learned that an American doctor was traveling in the area. Contacted, he agreed to perform surgery on the afflicted eye. St. Rafqa refused anesthesia. In the course of the surgery, her eye became detached. Within a short time, the disease struck the left eye. For the next 12 years, she continued to experience intense pain in her head. Throughout this period, as before, remained patient and uncomplaining, praying in thanksgiving for the gift of sharing in Jesus' suffering. Rafqa in St. Joseph Monastery, Eldar, in Drabta 1897 to 1914. When the Lebanese Maronite order decided to build the monastery of St. Joseph Eldar in Jor Abta, Batroun, in 1897, 6 nuns led by Mother Ursula Dumit were sent to the new monastery, with Rafqa among them. In 1899, she lost the sight of in her left eye. With this, a new stage of her suffering began, intensified by the dislocation of her clavicle and her right hip and leg. Her vertebrae were visible through her skin. Her face was spared and remained shining to the end. Her hands stayed intact, and she used to knit socks and make clothing. She thanked God for use of her hands, while also thanking Him for permitting her share in His Son's suffering. Preparing for death, she called upon the Mother of God and Saint Joseph. Finally, on March 23, 1914, after a life of prayer and service, and years of unbearable pain, she rested in peace. She was buried in the monastery cemetery. On July 10, 1927, her body was transferred to a shrine in the corner of the monastery chapel. The case for her beatification was introduced on December 23, 1925, and canonical investigation of her life began on May 16, 1926. Pope John Paul II declared her venerable on February 11, 1980 to beatified on November 17, 1985, a role model in the adoration of the Eucharist during the Jubilee year 2000. Rafqa Petra Chobak, also known as Saint Rafqa and Saint Rebecca. while Lebanese Maronite nun who canonized by John Paul II on June 10, 2001. Thank you for watching, and Saint Rafqa pray for us.